Hey Floyd, how you doing? Phoebe Rizzo here, talking once more. Okay, sometimes you go into a movie knowing it's going to be bad, and that's okay. Especially when you, it's especially okay if you go and pick this one up at Dollar Tree for $1. So we have The Girl in the Crawlspace. Excuse me. Well, looking at that cover, you're not really going to expect much out of this one. So I guess I got what I paid for. I really wasn't expecting too much, but if anything, it was a bit better than I expected, mostly because it did have some ideas, which, if it had taken and ran with, it may have been a bit more interesting. As it stands, yeah, the film's not good. The acting isn't as abysmal as I was expecting, and one or two characters do all right, but other things are kind of cringeworthy. And it's another one where, again, the info on the back is rather misleading. I mean, this one does actually cover the rough scope, but the part it hits at towards the end where it expresses what's causing the problem, yeah, that's not correct. So, we'll start there. After escaping from a notorious serial killer who kept her prisoner in a crawl space, accurate so far, Jill tries to work her way back into normal life with the help of Kristen, her therapist. Yeah, that's true. Kristen and her husband just moved back into this nation, so she's setting up her essentially her therapy business. And since this town has been rocked by tragedy, she's going into try to set up some support groups for because this killer has been abducting young kids for a while. So so far we're good here. When Kristen's husband Johnny, a failing screenwriter, so far also true, begins using Jill's ordeal as a basis for a new script, he unwittingly puts all their lives in jeopardy. Now that's not true. Yes, he does do that, but that has little to do with the main problem here. Okay, so a little bit more detail here. Johnny and what was it, Kristen? Yeah, just moved back into town, and their marriage is already rough, mostly because he's kind of a asshole. I guess to be fair, he's. I guess one of the reasons they moved out here is he had an affair with an actress, and and has been having some alcoholism problems. So he's here, so they move out here in the middle of nowhere, and he's supposed to be going to some therapy meetings, and also still be working on scripts, both of which he is doing neither. And the thing is, he's one of our primary characters we're following, and we follow him the most, and he is abrasive, unlikable, and does very little to redeem himself throughout it. So a lot of my problems come with Johnny here. So yeah, he's lying to his wife about working on the script, lying to her about going to therapy groups. Instead, he pretty much falls in with a D&D group out of the blue, since he played that in college, and oh boy, that group. They are the most stereotypical, cringe-inducing group you could say. And I play tabletop role-playing games. I do. And even I was wincing at some of their dialoguing. I mean, I can see what they were trying to do for this, but it really wasn't working. Especially with how rough he is around the group and how much of just a dick he is to everyone. And then he has the nerve to start getting defensive, saying that he's busy working and can't do these things to help out when he's clearly not. And acting like Kristen's in the wrong. Okay, anyway. So, Jill's the escapee. Now, she's the one that actually makes this sort of interesting, as she's usually doesn't like to be inside buildings anymore because of her ordeal. She doesn't like having a roof overhead. That makes sense. And she kind of is coping with things by essentially envisioning them as some of the events as movies, and is like kind of describes them out, which is what interests Johnny because he's like, well, these actually sound like they could be interesting, and he pretty much wants to just rip off her scripts and sell them as his own. Now, where the back of this case differentiates is, yeah, he's doing that, but it's her therapist's idea to get her to write down these movie scripts, to essentially as a way to work out what happened, because she's visualizing some of her trauma as a movie, so if she could write that out, it might help. But when the killer, who is still on the loose, despite... Now, they say early on that the sheriff shot the killer, and he died, but you know right away that, yeah, something's off here. Spoiler, the sheriff did it. I don't even care with this one. He's so obviously the villain. The first time he walks in, you just... yeah, okay, he's obviously was in cahoots with the killer, shot his partner to save face. Got it. You could make that out within 30 seconds of the guy entering the frame. It's like, oh, so we just have to wait for everyone else to catch up. Anyway, when he hears about the scripts that she's writing just for therapy, not because of Johnny, he starts he kidnaps Kristen, and then it's up to Jill and Johnny to figure out what happened to her and track her and save her from the Crawlspace killer. Yeah, so this movie was a little bit more psychological than I was expecting, which I appreciated, particularly on the part of Jill. She does a very good job here as recovering from the trauma. She's giving it her all and is doing more than anyone else in this film. Particularly towards the third act, where she's not sure if she actually escaped or not. She's like, has some occasionally like hallucinations or dreams and is wondering, did she really get out? Is this real, or am I just dreaming it that I did again? So those aspects are interesting when you start seeing her like kind of cut back and forth to whether or not thinks she's still in there or not. And if they took that and ran with it and left it uncertain whether she was out of the crawl space or not throughout the whole movie, it would have been much more interesting. So this movie did have some ideas. It just wasn't enough to save it. So yeah, this one I'm gonna give this one also 2 MacGuffins. It wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, and it actually did have some unique ideas into it. Well, maybe not completely unique, but less commonly done with a premise like this. So it was better than I expected, but I was expecting to give this one a 1 when I sat down to it. So I was pleasantly surprised that I could give this one a 2. Not a high bar, but more than I was expecting, and I guess it was at least worth the $1 I paid for it. Alright, that's all for that one. Next time, I could air some grievances. Stay tuned.